The music you left behind is still with us. And today, we're going to celebrate Dr. Billy Taylor on the 99th anniversary of his birth. Yeah, that's an excerpt from a 1958 television show that Billy Taylor produced with help from Leonard Feather, called The Subject is Jazz. This particular episode, the subject was bebop. And Billy assembled, of course, as he always did, a first-rate group with Ed Thigpen on drums, Ed Safransky on bass, Barry Galbraith on guitar, and the Adderley brothers, Cannonball on alto, and Brother Nat on cornet. And yes, Ed Thigpen on drums, Mika, definitely. These were great shows. These were groundbreaking shows. You got to remember in the 50s, aside from the Steve Allen show, you didn't see jazz on television, broadcast television. This was actually on NET in New York. It wasn't PBS then. It was National Educational Television. They did 13 shows. Unfortunately, there weren't more. But Billy, in addition to being an excellent pianist, that's how it all began, was an educator and explainer. So the 13 episodes, he took on different parts of jazz. Swing, the blues, international jazz, the future of jazz, and really got beneath the surface, played music and explained them. And that's something that he continued for the rest of his life, right up until the time he passed. He was involved, he was the jazz artistic director, at the Kennedy Center. Did a lot of programs there, a lot of educational programs. And one of the founders of Jazzmobile, the incredible series that brought jazz to the streets of New York in the 60s with concerts, free concerts. Drove around to different neighborhoods and presented the music like that. So Billy Taylor's a pretty remarkable person for the things that he accomplished in his life and also for the person he was. Everyone who knows, hard to find someone who has got a bad word to say about Billy Taylor because he was such a warm, engaging guy. And there was no difference in the way Billy Taylor acted, whether you were the President of the United States or just somebody who came up to him at a gig. He gave everyone his attention, his respect, and he was a man who deserved a lot of respect, and he got it. He was recognized in his lifetime. Beautiful wife and family. Tragically, he lost his son. His son died in a car accident. His wife, Teddy, is still with us. They live in Riverdale, and his daughter, Kim. In fact, their neighbor is my friend Lauren Schoenberg up on Kapok Street. As soon as you go over the bridge from Manhattan to Riverdale, that's where the apartment is. And I worked with Billy, I guess, for about 12 years. I saw him, of course, my first experience with Billy was on the radio, as it was with many people, because he was the voice of jazz in New York for a long time. And one of the stations he was on was WNEW AM. And when I was 13 years old, back in the early 60s, I used to have this radio that I would move around the house, move around the room so that I could pick it up. It was 100 miles away, but radio signals did travel. Sometimes they'd go in and out. And I was just starting to get into jazz, and here was this really warm, engaging guy. Come on in, check it out. And that was the beginning for me. And I was lucky to get to know Billy. Got a message coming in here. Okay, everything's cool. I got people checking out to make sure the audio and video are cool. So I came to New York, and a friend of mine was a protege of Clark Terry, who was a very close friend of Billy's. So I ended up going to see Billy at a Jazzmobile concert in City Hall. I forget who was in the band. I think, Clark was. Jimmy Heath may have been. I don't know. But that's the first time I met Billy. And then I'd see him in person. And then in the 90s, I got really involved with jazz education myself because I was working on a website called Jazz Central Station. I'm one of the founders of Jazz Central Station. It was the first major jazz website, which debuted in 1994. And Billy was the artistic director of Jazz Central Station. And that's how I began to work with him. And unfortunately, that site did not continue, but my relationship with him did. And I ended up doing his website for a number of years and then doing a lot of video with him. I went to his house. I shot a lot of interviews with him. You can find them here on YouTube. And he was also very generous in giving me a lot of videos from his closet that I initially began posting on Jazz Video Guide channel on YouTube. And Billy was also particularly encouraging for what I was doing. He realized the value of it. He himself was really not that into technology, but he realized the value of having these videos on YouTube easily accessible. I must have 150 Billy Taylor videos on here. So as he got older, he really did not get much slower. I mean, he used to go down to the Kennedy Center once or twice a week. He would leave his apartment, take a bus to the subway, take a subway to Penn Station, walk in a very large anteroom in Penn Station to get to Amtrak, and he's in his late 80s. He's shuffling slowly, and then he gets to Washington, and same thing. He did that up until like a few months before he passed. I mean, he just kept going. He kept trying to educate people about America's classical music, which is what he called jazz. And perhaps his biggest forum was on CBS Sunday Morning. He was a correspondent for 10 years, and he produced a lot of features about different musicians. The first time that these musicians had a chance to be on national TV like that. Unfortunately, there's no specific archive for those programs, but a lot of them, some of them are here on YouTube, and eventually they'll be released somewhere, somehow, some way. The same thing with the subject of jazz. What I'd like to do here is go to a documentary film that I made about Billy. Billy passed in December of 2011, and Billy had been sick for a while. He had a stroke. He wasn't in the greatest of health, but that happened to him once before, and he recovered. So we were rooting for him to get better, but sadly he passed away in December of 2011. And this is a film that I put together that tells Billy Taylor's story. It's called Billy Taylor, A Life in Jazz.
Jazz is many things to many people, but it is basically America's classical music.
William Edward Taylor, universally known as Billy, was born in North Carolina. It is hard to say what he hasn't accomplished. He is a performer, a lecturer, a regular television host, a radio station owner, a soloist with symphony orchestras, a trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation, a member of the National Council of the Arts, and a composer.
I thought that if I was lucky, I'd get to be the world's greatest piano player. As I grew older, I realized that there was no such thing as the world's greatest. If we were talking about a jazz musician, there was someone who did something totally different from what he did and did it just as well. I said, well, I have to readjust my thinking and see if I can find a spot so that I say, well, I do this better than anyone I know, you know. So I had to find something I did better.
This is Lou Ciaffi in California, and I am here with one of the great innovators and composers of the new jazz music. His name is Ferdinand Joseph Morton.
Call me Jelly Roll. That's what they call me. That's how I'm known.
Mr. Jelly Roll Morton is known among the jazzmen of Storyville, of Chicago, and St. Louis as one of the finest inventors and players of this new kind of music.
I have put my mark on the music, and when you hear it, you're often playing my melodies.
He's been explaining and demonstrating just how this new music comes about.
And I'll continue to elucidate and to indicate to you how it all happens.
One of my mentors, a man that I really respected, was named Art Tatum. He was one of the world's great players, and he had many new ideas. And when he sat at the piano, he could take something really simple and do something like that, and really make a piece of music out of it. And we have a film clip of Art, just briefly, that I'd like to show you, because I like just watch his fingers as he plays. This is Art Tatum.
Fine jazz instrumentalists like Art Tatum have developed strikingly original musical styles.
Art Tatum, he was really special, you know, doing all really fast and very beautifully. I worked with, in the place where he was playing, the club, that particular clip was filmed by the March of Time, when we were all working on 52nd Street at a place called the Three Deuces. I worked with Ben Webster there. It was my first job on 52nd Street. And right next door, Coleman Hawkins was another wonderful saxophone player that I had the opportunity to work with. But when I came back to the Three Deuces, it was with one of my all-time favorite singers. Her name was Ella Fitzgerald, and I loved the way she sang. She was really special. And if you look real hard, you'll see me at the piano on this next one. I was a whole lot younger then. But the influence of all of these musicians has been one that shaped the way that I play today. Here's a film clip of Ella Fitzgerald singing How High the Moon. How High the Moon. That was Ray Brown playing the bass and Charlie Smith playing the drums. And Ella Fitzgerald was just such a wonderful singer. We still play How High the Moon. We play it a little differently now, but I learned so much when I was working with her and with all those other wonderful musicians that I'd like to show you some of the things that I learned when I was on 52nd Street. I had met Dizzy and Bird earlier, and I had been fascinated by the things that I heard about them when they were both young kids and working with Earl Hines and so forth. I mean, they were legendary to younger musicians like myself then, you know, and this was in the early 40s, you know. And they, by the time I got to New York, they had developed considerable reputations, you know, among musicians. And so I wanted to play that. I wanted to play that music. I wanted to get closer to it. And I did. I got a chance to sit in with Dizzy Gillespie on 52nd Street with the original bebop group that he put together with Don Byas and Max Roach and Oscar Pettiford and himself. And it was really a joy to learn those little tunes. I mean, I was one of the first guys to learn it. Dizzy taught them to me. He said, "Look, you know, these are the changes. This is what you do. This is how to do it." And so I was, you know, so I when I went to the West Coast, I was telling guys out there who had never been this close to it. I said, "No, the changes are this, and this is what you do." Dizzy told me this.
The subject is jazz. With Gilbert Seldes. This program, Bop. With our guest, Julian Cannonball Adderley.
Go beneath the surface of bop, which I have mentioned, and ask Billy Taylor what, in essence, bop is. On that surface, Billy, I would say that 52nd Street theme can be called New York's answer to Basin Street, but bop must be something more than that.
Well, bop was an extension of many devices and conceptions which existed in swing and earlier styles of jazz. As far as bop was concerned, they used their approach was much more subtle, and the use of syncopations were usually in the order of this.
You've come to the melody. Where is that sustained? What happened to the melody?
Well, a melody is basically a series of single tones rhythmically arranged so as to produce a pleasing effect on the ear. Bebop melodies were harshly criticized by many people because the listeners found that their ears were affected in a manner far from pleasant by some of the unfamiliar intervals which bop songs were characterized by. Generally speaking, the bop phrases, which were related harmonically and were, well, linked together with very careful attention to the subdivisions of the beat, many of them sounded like this. So you see, when the bop musicians approached the beat, their approach was much more involved than the approach had been prior to this. They used many things which were rhythmically more complex, but in the hands of the best musicians, it still swung. And I think the continuity and emotional impact that their music had was comparable to any of the forerunners of bop.
I began to do things on the radio a lot, and I found out that people liked what I had to say, and when I spoke, I tried to really tell my audience, let them in on what I was doing. That was the first time in my life that I got really recognized. I mean, people knew the sound of my voice better than what I looked like. In the elevators, you know, in a department store, you know, talking to my wife or somebody, and say, I turned around and said, "Oh, hey, man," you know, and people recognized my voice, and that was they didn't know what I looked like, you know, and that was very nice.
When I was a young trumpet player, I think I first became aware of Billy Taylor when he became the musical director on the David Frost Show, and I used to run home from school so I could see the band on David Frost, because he featured his band quite prominently.
Make the announcement totally yourself. You've got young Billy down there. And...
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Frost presents Willie the Lion Smith and Billy Taylor. And one piece of Perdido.
I created Jazzmobile because I felt that jazz had become too expensive. Many people in Harlem couldn't afford to come to hear me play in Birdland, and Birdland was cheap. I mean, Birdland was not expensive, you know. But I mean, people were on hard times. I mean, they didn't have a lot of money. I said, well, you know, why can't we get some way to take the music directly to the community?
I was probably about 10 or 11. My dad started Jazzmobile, and I watched how he took music that had come from the black community back into the black community. People couldn't afford to go downtown to hear the likes of Dizzy Gillespie and you name it, the stars of the time. And so he brought them to the streets of Harlem so that people could hear them. And that meant a lot to me, that you get something and you develop it and you take it back to the communities.
Took jazz into the schools, and when we gave lectures and so forth, it occurred to us that we shouldn't do this on a one-time basis. We should share what we know with these young people, and what we tried to do was to update the kind of master-pupil relationship that I had with Art Tatum and the other people Duke Ellington had with Willie the Lion and other people, where the older musician gives the benefit of his experience. Younger musician is able to take that and do his own thing with that. And that's one of the things that we based Jazzmobile on. And people like Jimmy Heath, who was one of our early teachers, Jimmy Owens, Frank West, any number of musicians who had played with Count Basie and Lionel, you name them, these guys have played with everybody. I can't think of any music that gives me as much pleasure, as much any music that says as much to me as an individual as jazz has said to me over my life. The music I've experienced with Ellington, with all of the wonderful musicians I've worked with, to sit to play on the same bandstand as Ella Fitzgerald and play for her and realize what she did with the music that we were playing together. To be a part of any number of groups, where to sit in a crowded club and play with Candido and realize that this man, when I was working with him at that time, could barely speak English, and here we are communicating to the extent that people are jumping up, screaming at the excitement that we were able to do together. And you know, it's experiences like that that are unusual, and they make me feel that life has certainly been worth it.
Who did what he did in terms of communicating about jazz from the very beginning as a radio host? David Frost and all those shows he did for NPR, CBS Sunday, you can go on. So that's just amazing to do that. And you know, I think that's going to be his legacy, and I think that's how people will remember, probably more for the communication than his music, which, you know, is a great piano player.
Bailey Taylor is the Leonard Bernstein of jazz. Great communicator. He's an elegant, tolerant, intelligent person who was engaging, yet non-threatening.
Everybody loved Billy. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Billy Taylor.
Someone who will welcome you with open arms, no matter where you're from, your religious background. I don't think there's a bad bone in Billy Taylor's body.
Anyone could come up to him, always had time for people, no matter what was going on. I mean, that's what I'll always remember, the way that he would greet you. He'd remember your name. He'd maybe ask for your spouse. And of course, you would end up asking about Teddy, but yeah, that was such a unique quality to have that mixed with that incredible talent of a musician and communicator. You called Billy Taylor to do something or asked him for some help with something, you know, he returned your call, he'd do it or do his best to do it, and I mean, there's no intermediaries, no BS. He told you straight.
He recognized that people were important, individuals were important, not just the people who had big names, but the average person who would come up and take the time to say thank you or hello. He would stop and talk to them and make them feel important and let him know that he appreciated that they stopped him. And that said a lot to me. You know, not only his work with Jazzmobile, but his work just with individual people made me realize that he cared about people, he focused on people, he enjoyed it, he thrives on that.
When I came to New York, I was 18 years old, and I did have the opportunity to play with Dr. Taylor on the David Frost show. I think I was still 18, and I remember one time I showed up a little bit late for the rehearsal, and Dr. Taylor sort of gave me this look, okay, youngster, but you know, I still feel guilty about it to this day. But he was very kind to me as a young upcoming musician, because there were all of these great trumpet players in New York, and he chose me to come and sit in with his band. So I was very honored to be able to play with his band.
Billy is a pianist, is a wonderful stylist in his own right. When I hear Billy Taylor, he has his own style and his own signature. And that's the thing about when you are a jazz musician and you have arrived at that point where your style and your sound is identifiable, the way you approach your phrasing and your use of the rhythmic aspects of things. And Billy had that, and he was able to transcend a variety of styles. He could work with Ben Webster, he could work with Charlie Parker, I mean, on and on and on. You know, his track record speaks for itself.
He not only loves jazz and understands it, but is able to communicate it in essential terms so that anybody feels that they're able to understand it.
Dr. Taylor is a notorious practicer and rehearser. And I think that's one of the qualities that makes his music so special. He wants to get it just right. And as a guest with his group, his trio, I felt like I was at home. And I thought that that was very gracious and generous of him to welcome me in that manner.
One of the things I always loved about Billy too, and I'm going to miss him because he mentored me and I learned so much from being with him. And he was, every time I'd call him, he was always ready, willing, and open to discuss things with me and offer me ideas. Well, why don't you try this? Or maybe you might want to look at this a little. You know, that kind of thing. It wasn't just well, kid, you know, do this kind of thing. It was always, he was very open and able to really blend in with creating a dialogue, not a monologue.
He's one of my heroes. And although I have many heroes, he is one that remains and is very steadfast. He will remain a part of my life, and he will be an inspiration to me.
Throughout his life, Dr. Billy Taylor has shared unselfishly his extraordinary talent and knowledge of jazz with the world. He shared it with soul, feeling, comprehensively, and with style. And we're all certainly much richer for it.
Yeah. Geez, I hadn't watched that since I did it. I think I transferred it once, and obviously I screwed up the transfer, the aspect ratio. That's why some of the titles were cut off. I apologize for that, but shit happens in this multitasking life. I will fix it though for the next screening. Billy Taylor. Yeah, I think that tells the story pretty well. I'm proud of that piece. Billy Taylor started a educational concert series in UMass Amherst called Jazz in July, where musicians would come and work with students, and then they'd play, the masters, the teachers, and the students. It might be still going, I don't know, but the summer after Billy passed, they asked me to put something together, and that's what I ended up doing. It was, a labor of love, because you don't meet many people in life like Billy Taylor. One of a kind, definitely. And even if he'd just been a pianist, I mean, in some ways, because all of his other stuff took away from what a great pianist he really was. Certainly Art Tatum saw it. Art Tatum heard it. So check out my Billy Taylor Art Tatum video where he talks about hanging out with Art Tatum. That's a lot of fun. And Billy Taylor's first big gig, he got that gig because when he was at a club on 52nd Street with Tatum, Ben Webster was there, and Ben Webster heard him play one number. Tatum let Billy Taylor play it. Ben Webster heard him, and then the next week Billy Taylor opened at Minton's with Ben Webster. So it was a different world back then in 1944 for sure. And it was a different world 99 years ago when Billy was born in Washington, D.C. We need more like Billy Taylor, but that happens organically. Who knows when the next one will be? I wouldn't wait, though. Let's do the best of what we have in this life. Challenging times, certainly, for all of us, but we can't lose sight of what really matters. And Billy Taylor never lost sight of that. His mission was to keep jazz alive and prospering, and his unsaid mission was as a humanitarian, the way that he treated people. And that is something that I practice myself. I don't think that who people are, what their status is not as important as what's in their hearts. In these times, people are branded a certain thing because of the color of their skin. We thought maybe some of that would disappear. No, it's come to the surface again. In fact, Billy was close to Dr. Martin Luther King. He wrote, the name of it escapes me now. He wrote a sweet, Peaceful Warrior, I think it was called. Yeah. Yeah, when he spoke of Dr. King, he had a certain glint in his eye. No doubt about that. So I'm coming to the end of today's show. I want to thank you for joining me. Next week, I'm back on a kind of a Thursday and Friday schedule. Thursday's show is going to be a tribute to McCoy Tyner, who left us recently. I've got some video that a lot of you have never seen before of McCoy. And Saturday's my birthday. Hey, so on Friday, I'm going to do what I call a birthday broadcast. I'm going to play some of my favorite videos, some of my favorite music. Maybe I'll tell some of my stories, crazy stories about my life in jazz. Some of them I can't tell. Some of them are X-rated. Out of respect for the individuals involved, I will not tell them. But, you live 70 years on this planet, a lot happens. And I've been involved with this music basically since I was 11 years old. It's 59 years. Hard to believe I'm this old. I'm going to be 71 on August 1st. Wow. It's crazy. I've had my ups, I've had my downs, but I keep going. I keep saying that. That's all I know how to do. Feel very lucky to do what I do, and the people that I've worked with, and I'm working on some very cool projects right now that continues. I've spoken about my Hello Italy. I've spoken about my documentary about anti-Semitism. That goes on. And I just started working on a series of videos for Flying Dutchman Records. This is a label that has been dormant for many years. This is a label started by a guy named Bob Thiel, who one of the people who started Impulse Records, and of course he produced all of the Coltrane records on Impulse. That is quite a legacy, Bob Thiel, who's no longer with us. But after Impulse, he started his own label called Flying Dutchman, and there was some great music on that label. Lonnie Liston Smith and the Cosmic Echoes, Oliver Nelson, Gato Barbieri. Bob Thiel discovered Gil Scott Heron. Gil Scott Heron, he's not a bird. Gil Scott Heron. But also because Bob Thiel saw music as a political statement, also put out speeches by H. Rap Brown and Angela Davis, and a lot of political stuff on there. So I am kind of producing some Instagram videos, which I'll post on my channel on Facebook and on YouTube. Something about the label, some of the music, and it's going to be coming out. I'll have more details about that. Bob Thiel's son, Bob Thiel Jr., who's a musician, is the impetus behind this. He contacted me thanks to Jeff Levinson. Jeff Levinson suggested I might be able to help him. And Bob Thiel Jr. Is a musician. He's a composer. He does a lot of work for TV. He did, I don't know, the show, maybe some of you do, called The Sons of Anarchy. Interesting title. He did the soundtrack for that. And he's 65. He was there. And so, kind of a dream assignment for me. I love to edit, and I love that music. And I love the politics that is involved. So that's my big project right now. What's coming in the future? Who knows? I just want to keep going, as I've said. If you'd like to support what I'm doing, there are links in the description. Send me 50 cents, send me a quarter. I don't like being a beggar, but I can use help. I appreciate it. I realize that not everyone can do that. Just your presence is a wonderful thing. I don't do this for the money, thankfully. I make my money from a variety of places, different projects, different things. So I don't want to say I feel uncomfortable at asking for money, but I'm not crazy about it, but I have to do it. So if you can, contributions are greatly appreciated. So next week we have a McCoy Tyner on Thursday, and then Friday, more music from Hannibal Marvin Peterson, the trumpet player that I've kind of rediscovered. I posted one of his videos last week. Then the following week, I've got Mike Abeni coming. Mike was a pianist and arranger with Maynard Ferguson's mid-60s band. That's where I first met him and encountered him. And then he went on to do a lot of arranging, composing. He worked with the WDR Orchestra. And very funny, extremely talented guy, another guy with great stories. And I love Maynard stories. I was into Maynard when I was a kid. Maynard was one of my early idols. I was a trumpet player. I was into Dizzy Gillespie, Lee Morgan, and Maynard Ferguson. Always the same time, by the way, for my show, which is noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Rome, the middle of the night in Asia. Sorry, folks, but you'd always see these things on demand. And I forgot what I was talking about. This is what happens here. Oh, okay. So Micah Benny is going to be my guest, and then the day after that, an Italian pianist, Stefano Bellani, will be joining us. He's going to do some playing live. He just did a jazz solo piano version of Jesus Christ, Superstar. Never heard that before. And we got a special program coming up on July 29th. On August 29th. August 29th. Anybody know whose birthday is August 29th? Come on, folks. Interaction, participation. Jazz legend, jazz innovator, jazz hero, Charlie Parker. If you live in New York, you may be familiar with the WKCR Lester Young Charlie Parker birthday broadcast, because Lester Young has his birthday either the day before or the day after Bird. So I'm going to come on with Kansas City alto player Bobby Watson, who played with Art Blakey and has since positioned himself as one of the really great alto players, and really cool guy. I know Bobby for many years, and it escapes me at this moment. A gentleman has just written a new biography of Charlie Parker, which I understand a lot of people like very much. So I will talk with him about Bird, and the rest of August, I don't know. You can find the schedule for what I do, jazzvideoguy.live.com. Once again, jazzvideoguy.live.com. And also on Facebook on the Jazz Video Guy page. I post the schedule there. So everyone stay healthy, stay positive, keep listening to jazz, and keep swinging. And